I would like to invite Mr. R. Viswanathan, who is popularly known as Ambassador Viswanathan.
Good evening. Before going into the topic, changing face of relations, I want to mention about the faces of Indians and Latin Americans involved in the relations, involved in promotion of relations. There's a saying in India that those who are enthusiastic promoters of Latin America in India are either in their 60s or they're stuck in the 60s of Latin America. The admirers of the Latin America of the 60s are uncritical and ideological. Now, in the case of Latin America, they go even deeper. The Latin American scholars of India, they are stuck in the India of Sanskrit and Upanishads. So in the past, the faces of Indians and Latin Americans were past-oriented and ideological in promoting relations. In contrast, now comes new, refreshing, young faces. This is the scholarly side. On the business, I always tell the Indian businessman that the risk of doing business with Latin America is falling in love. And quite a few have taken the risk and fallen in love. There are these 3 Indian boys from Agra, Delhi and Coimbatore who went to Colombia for an IT project. Promptly they fell in love with 3 Colombian girls and left their company. They formed their own company called Sophos Solutions, which is doing extremely well. From Brazil, a girl called Cecilia Angelon. She went to London looking for a job. And she got a job as a sales girl in a shop run by an Indian called Malhotra. And soon, Cecilia Angelon became Cecilia Malhotra. She took him to Sao Paulo. And she wanted to do some business with India. So she started importing henna powder from India. The business picked up. She started exporting to other countries of Latin America. Being smart, she thought, why import the finished products? Let me import the ingredients. She made her own brand called Surya Henna, exporting from United States to Chile, built up a business of $20 million. And guess what? She's exporting to India now. And she wants to set up a plant in India to manufacture for exports to Southeast Asia. These are the new faces in India-Latin America relations. Besides these faces of Indians and Latin American, there are 2 other outsider faces which have started influencing these relations. One is the Americans and the other one is Chinese. In January this year, there was a blog in America's Quarterly saying, is this not the time for India to be in Latin America? America's Quarterly. There have been a series of articles and blogs in American think tanks, media, including Miami Herald, advocating, cheerleading greater presence of India in Latin America. Obvious. A U.S. general in a congressional investigation, a hearing, he talked about the Chinese pivot to the Americas, like the American pivot to Asia. So to counter that, to a limited extent, the Americans have been encouraging greater Indian presence in Latin America. Johns Hopkins University is coming out with a book early next year. It's called Latin America's Relations with China and India. Now, China, in the last China CELAC summit, the Chinese president said, in the next 10 years, the trade would be taken from $270 billion last year to $500 billion in the next 10 years. And he promised investment of $250 billion in the next year. Already they have done close to about $100 billion. China has given credit of $120 billion. What they gave in 2014 was more than the combined credit given by World Bank, Inter-American Development Bank and US Exim Bank. But it is a win-win partnership between Latin America and China. But Latin America is worried. They had some experience and they don't want to be over-dependent on China. I'll give you an example. Argentina is the largest exporter of soya oil in the world. China is the largest importer of soya oil in the world. In 2008, the Chinese got annoyed with the Argentines' restriction on import of Chinese goods. So they said, no, there's something wrong with your soya oil, technical specification. They drastically reduced the import from $2 billion to just about $200 million. They finished the market. Now today, India is the largest importer of Argentine soya oil. When the Chinese companies in 2007-8 came to Latin America wanting to buy whole provinces in Rio Negro, in Argentina, in Bahia, in Brazil, the Latin American got rattled and they started imposing restrictions on foreign acquisition of land. In Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, now it's only 5,000 hectares. In Buenos Aires, in the greater Buenos Aires, there are around 10,000 supermarkets, mini supermarket shops run by the Chinese. You can't buy anything without going to the Chinese shops there. Now, because of these fears, Latin Americans want to diversify, reduce their over-dependence on China and look at countries like India. Politically and economically, there is a new perception, there is a new mindset between Indians and Latin Americans. The Latin Americans look at the new India and the Indians are looking at the new Latin America. This new Latin America is characterized politically by political stability and democratic maturity. In the olden days, Latin America was subjected to ideological polarization, civil wars. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed. But today, the dominant trend in Latin America is not extreme left, not extreme right, going towards the center. People call it as Lulaism or Brasilia consensus in contrast to the Washington consensus. It is a balanced mix of pro-poor and business-friendly policies. So this is the way Latin America is going to move. And Latin America is the region which has reduced poverty much more than any other region in the last decade. Over 60 million people have come out of poverty. And the conditional cash transfers is not just a leftist thing. It was practiced in Mexico. In most countries of Latin America, you have conditional cash transfers which are operated more efficiently than in India. With this, more people are joining the middle class, having stake in democratic strength and stability. That is why India is betting on the new Latin America of political stability and democratic maturity. One of the symbols of this democratic maturity is what they did in Mexico, called Mexico Pact. Mexico is today the largest democracy in the world which has done so many major reforms in this short period. Economically, the Indians look at the new Latin America as more stable and growing. The macroeconomic fundamentals of Bolivia are much stronger than Germany or that of United States. And the economies have become resilient. Now, this is the new Latin America. And the Latin Americans look at India as a great market, growing market for their products, crude oil, agricultural products. Now, crude oil, United States used to be the main consumer of crude oil from Mexico, Venezuela, Ecuador, Colombia, and Brazil. But now, United States is becoming self-sufficient. So they have to look for new markets. And India is the one. Last year, our imports from Latin America was over 15% of our total requirements. On the commercial side, I just want to mention one thing. The healthcare. Today, if the cost of healthcare for the Latin American consumers and the governments are much less than what it was about 20 years back, it's thanks to the Indian pharmaceutical companies who introduced generic medicines. And the Latin American political leaders, they invited the Indian companies to put pressure on the multinationals and their own pharmaceutical companies to increase the proportion of generic medicines and to bring down the cost. So I tell people, let us imagine there is no past. Let's imagine that we were born when we got to know each other. So that should be the approach. Thank you.
Now I would invite Professor Ash Narayan Roy. I have known him for many decades. Like me, he was also a journalist with a leading newspaper in India called Hindustan Times, which comes every morning in Delhi.
Thank you, Shri Gupta. Ambassador Viswanathan, fellow panelists, excellencies, and friends of Latin America. I will come directly to the subject. It seems there is a lot that is common between India and Latin America. One such commonality is the adoration of the past, but also lamentations for the present. As they say, India lives in the 21st century and in the 16th centuries and in all the centuries in between. Even in Latin America, as the new mariachi opera puts it, el pasado nunca se termina. The past never ends. But commonalities also involve stereotypes. And that's why you have the fiestas, siestas, and mañana when it comes to the stereotypes about Latin America. Now, when it comes to India, the Indian elephant may be wanting to become a lion under the present government, but India is still a land of sadhus, snake charmers, and the Kama Sutra. There is another problem. In the postmodern world, there seems to be no fundamental truth. It is essential to bear that in mind. In fact, it is said that truth has as many as 50 shades of gray. Particularly so because it is said that in a continent like Latin America, truth can often be stranger than fiction. So it's very important to bear that in mind. That being the case, it makes my task all the more difficult because I'm going to speak on making sense of new Latin America. That is the subject I'm talking. You see, there is a phrase in Spanish called es lo que hay. That is, it is what it is. That speaks of infinite sense of pragmatism among the Latin American people. But such a shrug of apathy of the past has given way to a new sense of ire, a new sense of abject disgust against injustices. And today, if there is a sense of injustice, the Latinos will say, que vergüenza, what a shame. So that is the change we are talking about. Now, let me speak a while about the early narratives of Latin America. While the outsiders sought to project Latin America as a land of death bomb, military coups, stagflation, guerrilla war, and of course, the US backwater, Latin Americans themselves also use lamentations about the region. I will point to a couple of them. There is a famous song in Mexico, it says, "Today is like yesterday in a world without tomorrow." Then we have at the philosophical level, again, the Mexican philosopher Leopoldo Zea, who said, "We are," I am quoting, "the people who never win. We carry our defects in the blood." Even Octavio Paz had talked about the smiling mask. But much of it has changed today, and I'm speaking about that change. From Gabriel Garcia Marquez's magical realism, today we have another Colombian, Juan Gabriel Vasquez, who talks of disproportionate reality. Mario Vargas Llosa also says something very interesting. He says, Latin America actually lacks an identity because it has all of it. So Latin America is no more a land of tomorrow. Actually, Latin America is today making a world where there will be many worlds. So it is talking of not universe, but pluriverse, where many worlds will exist. And that is exactly what we are going to see what Latin America is changing today. There is an increased sense of self-esteem in Latin America, and that is a change. It has also moved in the direction of creating a new narrative of nationhood by challenging the earlier assumptions about culture, history, race, citizenship, and the like. And hence, there is an alternative reading of the past, and that is creating new discoveries about Latin America, and that is exactly what we need to talk about. I'm also very intrigued by a new slogan that I ran into during this resistance movement. It says, "No one represents us, so join hands with us." Very interesting. Someone also calls it everyday revolution. Let us recall the experience of what happened in Argentina in around 2000. You had the economy collapsing. The government was not able to do much. People came out onto the streets, banging pots and singing, "Que se vayan todos." All must go. That is the kind of slogan it came. And I think that's why the rest of the world also started following it. We have forgotten where it started all. Even in terms of what we consider as revolution, there has been a change. Someone says revolution is a spectacle everywhere. But I heard someone say, "Estamos parados entre la revolución y la televisión." We stand between television and revolution. Okay? But about the Indignados movement, there was something very interesting, and I want your attention to be drawn. It said, "Hay menos perroflautas, más emprendedores y marketing." There are few street performers, more entrepreneurs and marketing. Okay, this is how it is. But let me talk about new symbols of power that we see in Latin America. Lula was a shoeshine boy. The present president of Venezuela was a school dropout and a former bus driver. Bolivian president was a construction worker. Carlos Mesa of Bolivia, when he became the president, he said, "Kindly curtail my tenure. I don't want to be in power for 5 years." President Jose Mujica of Uruguay till some months ago, he used to donate 90% of his salary to charity. That is the new Latin America that we must also know about. I'm sure many of you know it. So Latin America has started doing many other things, including building democracy from the bottom up, and that also has to be talked about. In terms of social movements, power is no more located in the pink house, Casa Rosada, or for that matter in the state, it is being created among the people, among social movements. That is also something new. Many of these movements have been to deepen democracy. Others are to redefine citizenship. You see, many people will, particularly in Ecuador, people will say, okay, the vertical state no doubt legislates, but for a large number of people, the state has never arrived. And certainly for the indigenous people, it happened. The movement is also against what has been called extractivism, that you simply extract all the mineral resources without bearing in mind the implications of ecology and all that. You know, all these things supplement and create a new identity for Latin America, and that is the beauty, and that leads, that is the future of Latin America. Coming to the indigenous problem, I have a feeling that that is something which all of us need to take a page out of the Latin American experience. In 2003, President Lula told a Latin American gathering, our people, that is workers, have waited for many decades to come to the power, to which Peruvian President Alejandro Toledo, who was the first Peruvian of indigenous origin, retorted, my people have waited for 500 years. Now that is the kind of change. I would say that democratization also creates more space, more opportunities. And that's why I see what is happening today. It's all thanks to democracy's widening that, in fact, I would say democratizing democracy, that you see all such spaces have been created and many more stakeholders have been created in the democratic process, and that is a good sign that we must also need to talk about. Coming to Ecuador and Bolivia, there was a time when race was the matrix of power, and whitening of race was considered to be progress. Sorry, people rejected it. They said, this is no more. Racism is racism. We don't accept it. And hence, the country has moved from uninational to plurinationalism, from monoculture to interculturalism. And many other countries have sought to create such institutions, and that is something new. In fact, Ecuador has also given the nature the right to live, which is something very interesting. So two countries have created that kind of flow. Let me now talk of the kind of regional blocks. I will just mention how you have two alliances available, the Pacific Alliance and Mercosur, ALBA. So you have two different kinds of opportunities for the Indian industry to make dealings with them. Of late, what is happening is that the boom is fading and the protests have started rising, even in countries which have sought to build from below the democracy, and that is also the beauty of the whole process. I would like to conclude by making some general statements that it is this new Latin America that all those interested in doing business with need to know and need to cultivate. Should India do what China has done? Well, China has a plan. It is not doing charity. It's not throwing money to grab headlines. It has cash. It has projects. But it also has political agenda. Some would argue China is picking the cherry on the cake. Perhaps India can pick its own cherries, because growth is not a bottle of champagne. It is also equity. $1 worth of potato chip is different from $1 worth of microchip. In the end, I will say how India and China are dealing with Latin America differently in just 1 minute. There is a big difference. China seems to have entered into courtship with Latin America. Whether it ends in happiness or tears, time alone will say. When it comes to India, it is still in a phase of romance. It seems India is telling Latin America, kaho na pyar hai, say that we are in love. And Latin America seems to be responding, te quiero, I love you. But Latin America is yet to say, tú eres mi amor, you are my love. Thank you very much.